Major footy record.
Hi everyone, welcome to On The Record, brought to you by Woolworths as we take a sneak peek inside this week's edition of the AFL Record, Australia's #1 selling sports weekly magazine. And joining me today is my friend from AFL Media, the king of K-Rock footy, Pete Ryan.
Well, that's some introduction, Ash.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to go straight to our feature story for the front half of the magazine. It's the Swans-Adelaide game on Saturday night at the SCG. Pete, if not for one stumble each by these sides, it would have been the grand final preview. So this is a really big game for a knockout semi-final.
Yeah, it's incredible to think going into round 23, probably the likely grand final matchup, and now one loss and they're out.
Now, Eddie Betts has been the superstar, 70 goals this year for the Crows. How is he going to translate to the different dimensions of the SCG?
Well, that's the big question. Kicked 6, obviously, against North Melbourne. Superstar on Adelaide Oval. He's kicked 9 goals in 6 games at the SCG in his career, but he's obviously a better player now than he was back in his early days. If they can stop him, they'll go a long way to winning.
And that's Nick Smith's job, isn't it?
That's Nick Smith's job. He's all-Australian defender, probably with Rory Laird, the best small defender in the game. He knows pressure occasions. He won't sleep too well, though, having Eddie Betts, because Eddie Betts is a genius at the moment. And, good luck, Nick Smith.
Now, I sat and watched that game on Saturday, the Swans v Giants game, and how did you... I couldn't believe that Lance Franklin was playing so far up the ground for so much of the game.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I saw him do it against Geelong and it was really effective, but it didn't seem to work. I suppose he wanted to potentially get up there and intimidate a few of the young Giants midfielders. That didn't really work. They really need him to kick goals. He's so explosive, he can play anywhere, so I can see why they're trying to, basically have him in 2 spots at once, but they need him deep forward.
At the SCG, he just parks himself 60 metres out from goal, doesn't he? That's where he does his best work.
Well, the thing with him, he can electrify the crowd and his team if he can actually get on the end of a few and kick some of his famous goals, and it actually just lifts the whole team and probably deflates the opposition. So I'd really love to see him aiming to kick 3 or 4 and just get the Swans up and going.
Also this week in the record up the front, we've got Cal Toomey having a bit of a look at this year's draft. Some of the big names we expect to go high up in the NAB AFL draft. And also former umpire Stuart Wen looks at the mindset of the umpires going into the September finals. Turning now to the back half, Friday night at the MCG, we've got the Bulldogs and Hawthorn in the first semi-final. History against the Bulldogs, Pete. They're 0 for 4 against the Hawks in September.
Yeah, well, that's right, but I don't think this Western Bulldogs this lineup cares too much about history. They're all about the now.
Matt Suckling, of course, interesting story out of this game. Left the Hawks at the end of last season, played in 2 flags there to go to the Western Bulldogs. How do you rate his season?
Well, I think his season's been as good as it has been at the Hawks. He's a great kick, obviously, who can use the ball out of the back half. Luke Beveridge wanted to get him across, had seen what he could do at Hawthorn. He's been okay without brilliant, but he's a real steadying influence down back. He knows final experience, and he'll be good against the Hawks.
A key player for the Bulldogs will be Caleb Daniel, who was so good in the the elimination final against West Coast, and he put the clamps on Sam Mitchell the last time they played.
Yeah, he's an interesting choice to match up because he's so dynamic as well, but Sam Mitchell wouldn't want to just not worry about Caleb Daniel. I reckon he was the player that every single person I spoke to after the Bulldogs West Coast game mentioned first. Everyone loves watching him play. He's small in stature, but he's got a big heart and he's a great player already, only 20.
James Sicily should be back for the Hawks, and I imagine he would be a really important inclusion.
He's a huge inclusion. He's kicked 29 goals. He was surprised that he wasn't playing. I know they said he was ill, but there's still question marks about that. They need a marking forward up there.
Obviously, probably the one thing they didn't have against Geelong.
Yeah, no doubt. They've got those 3, Paul Puopolo, Cyril Rioli and Luke Bruce, who are genuine champions, really. And Sicily can just add that worrying thing. And when he gets the big moment, we know even as a young player, he loves the big moment. Obviously kicked the match winner against the Bulldogs earlier in the season. Gets Sicily back in, and that gives the Dogs something to worry about.
It also helps with Jack Gunston, I think, as well, with Sicily back on the side. Gunston's a good finals player, but he needs some help. Yeah,
well, Gunston started to probably, it's a bit unfair, but flag in the last 6 weeks and really feel the pressure of being that one out, so it would give him an opportunity to run up and down the ground and get loose.
Right, just quickly, your 2 tips for the semi-finals.
Well, I think the Sydney Swans will get Adelaide. Although Adelaide's got a brilliant forward line, I think they'll be squeezed on the SCG. And I've got to go with the Bulldogs, the glamour team. Can't go past them. And Hawthorn, look, it's impossible to tip against them, but I am.
Thanks, Pete. And now to my tips for the semi-finals. I think the Hawks can bounce back and get the win over the Bulldogs at the MCG on Friday night. And I think Adelaide, they've found their mojo and they can beat the Swans in the Saturday night game at the SCG. And now let's have another look at this year's finalists for the Woolworths Mark of the Year competition.
Here's McKenzie, wasting no time. Drives it a long way from goal. Oh, Dawg! Wow. Marks of the Year from Lobb. Back with a flight. It was never his.
I'm voting for Essendon's Joe Danaher. You can have your say by visiting markoftheyear.afl.com.au. So that's it for this week's edition of On The Record. 2 covers this week, 1 for each game. The finals record costs $10, so look for the kids in the green caps and the green jackets. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.